there's something really strange about how predictable our favorite stories actually are. We might think we love them for their originality, but we're actually drawn to the same patterns and archetypes that have been recycling through human consciousness for millennia. The heroes, the conflicts, and even the resolutions are all variations on ancient themes. But the stories that survive are the ones refining these patterns and perfecting them, not just repeating them. And when you start looking at the evidence, you realize this isn't random. There's a specific combination of archetypes, conflicts, and story arcs that seem to trigger our emotions. A universal blueprint for stories that refuse to die. Every culture on Earth independently created the same story about a hero who leaves home, faces trials, and returns transformed, and that's not a coincidence. The Mesopotamians had Gilgamesh, the Greeks had Odysseus, the Japanese had Momotaro. Indigenous Australian cultures had their own versions. None of these societies were talking to each other, yet they all landed on nearly identical narrative structures. Research shows we consistently gravitate toward variations on basic character types. The hero who grows through struggle, or the mentor who guides but cannot complete the journey themselves. The shadow who represents our darker impulses, or even the trickster who breaks rules and reveals truth through chaos. We see these archetypes everywhere. Just like in the Greek myth where Athena was the wise mentor guiding the heroes, we see mentor characters in modern anime like Jiraiya from Naruto filling that same role. Or Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings guiding the hobbits. Both Edward Elric from Full Metal Alchemist and Luke Skywalker from Star Wars follow the hero's journey so precisely that you can overlay their character arcs and find almost perfect matches despite being separated by decades and completely different storytelling traditions. Even seemingly original characters like Walter White are actually variations on the classic tragic hero archetype. They start with noble intentions, gain power through questionable means, become corrupted by that power, and ultimately face consequences that destroy them. Star Wars became a cultural phenomenon partly because Lucas drew inspiration from classic mythic patterns and deliberately crafted characters to match them. Obi-Wan Kenobi hits every single beat of the classic mentor archetype. He provides wisdom, he has a mysterious past connected to the hero's destiny, and he sacrifices himself at the crucial moment to enable the hero's growth. But archetypal characters are just the foundation. These character templates need something to drive them forward, something that creates the tension and struggle that makes us care about their journey in the first place. Struggles manifesting as conflicts have been woven into stories throughout human history. Every person who has ever lived wrestled with internal doubts, faced opposition from others, clashed with societal expectations, and battled natural forces. In The Dark Knight, Bruce Wayne's fight against the Joker reflects his internal battle with his dark impulses. The same can be said about Luke Skywalker as he faces Darth Vader. For these characters, they are not just fighting an external enemy, but confronting their own internal darkness. The Hunger Games succeeds because Katniss's rebellion against the Capitol represents every person's struggle against oppressive systems. The dystopian technology and televised death matches are just part of the packaging, but the core conflict appears in every era where the people challenge corrupt authority. But conflicts alone don't make stories timeless. What makes us return to the same stories across generations is how they tap into emotional experiences that every human being knows intimately. The specific circumstances change, but the feelings remain universal. Timeless stories often explore high-impact emotional experiences that leave a permanent mark on audiences. For me, these emotional experiences were what I loved most about the timeless stories of my childhood. From the tragic death of Mufasa to the pain of betrayal in Julius Caesar, timeless stories have a way of exploring emotional experiences in ways we never forget. Timeless stories understand that certain emotional experiences are so fundamental to being human that they transcend culture and era. The found family trope in Harry Potter or X-Men resonates because the desire to belong somewhere, to be accepted for who we are, is universal. The Queen's Gambit connects across generations because the fear of not being enough despite our talents or efforts is something every person faces. The pain of loss. The frustration of inadequacy. The triumph of perseverance. We might forget plot details or character names, but we never forget how these stories made us feel. But understanding these emotional experiences is just the beginning. The stories that truly endure have found ways to communicate these ancient tensions implicitly, using a language that speaks to something deeper than conscious thought. The most powerful moments in stories are the ones that don't need any explanation. When Frodo puts on the ring and becomes invisible, the implicit message of how power isolates us from human connection doesn't need to be explained. Certain symbols transcend cultural and temporal boundaries. A red rose means passionate love, whether you're reading Shakespeare or watching a modern romance. Water has represented cleansing and rebirth since ancient Mesopotamia. Fire symbolizes destruction and transformation across many cultures and time periods. Light and darkness represent good versus evil, but also knowledge versus ignorance, hope versus despair, truth versus deception. The best symbols evolve throughout a story, gaining new meanings while retaining their original power. Great stories make use of multiple layers of symbolism that allow audiences of all kinds to appreciate, based on their own lived experiences. A child watching The Lion King sees a story about growing up. An adult sees themes about responsibility, the cycle of life, and coming to terms with mortality. The symbolic elements work on both levels simultaneously, so audiences can mature and return to them with different perspectives. Harry Potter's scar starts as a simple mark of survival but accumulates layers of meaning as the story progresses. It becomes a symbol of connection to Voldemort, a source of both power and vulnerability, a reminder of sacrifice and love, and ultimately a representation of the burden of destiny. But even the most powerful symbols and archetypal conflicts can't guarantee a story's immortality on their own. The stories that truly endure understand that the most important elements are often the ones they choose not to reveal. The difference between a story you forget next week and one that haunts you for decades often comes down to what the story refuses to tell you. When everything is spelled out clearly, there's nothing left for our brains to work with. We consume the story and move on. But when key elements remain mysterious, our minds keep turning them over long after the credits roll. Our brains don't like unresolved questions. They keep working on them in the background, generating theories and possibilities. This mental activity creates a deeper connection to the story. The narrative becomes partly yours through the meaning you project into its gaps. Inception generates decades of fan theories because that spinning top deliberately refuses to resolve whether Cobb is dreaming or awake. The unresolved ending keeps the philosophical questions alive long after the movie ends. Different interpretations of the same story can coexist, allowing multiple generations to find relevant meaning in the same narrative. The Lord of the Rings can be read as a story about industrialization destroying nature, or as a tale about good versus evil, or as a meditation on friendship and sacrifice. Each reading is valid because Tolkien built in enough symbolic complexity to support multiple interpretations. These blank spaces are the final pieces in a story built to last. Timeless stories are humanity's method of preserving essential truths about existence across generations. Every culture develops storytelling not just to pass time, but to pass down wisdom about what it means to be human. The stories that survive carry the accumulated insights of thousands of years of human experience. In our changing world, it's more important than ever for authors to position themselves as creators and build a following. That's why I built BookBackr, a platform that makes it easy to upload and distribute your work and build monthly income from your supporters. Join now and be grandfathered in at a reduced 5% platform fee.